and then progressively came further and further back to Newark.
Right, we're ready to go. Hello, good evening, and welcome once again. I'm still trying to get over that problem what I had yesterday, folks, with the with my hair and everything, and all that gel in my hair. It was really horrible. But anyway, I've washed it all out in the end. But I'm still waiting for the haircut. Actually, I might get I might shave it all off, like my guest tonight, Duncan, and. Anyway, hello, Duncan. How are you?
Hi, Steve. Good, thank you. Yeah, no issues with gel tonight with me. You'll be pleased to hear.
So anyway, Duncan, tell everybody what you do and who you are. And
So I'm Duncan. I am a partner in a counselling practice called Active Listening Therapies. I also have my own brand, which is slightly on the side, called Think Duncan. But essentially, I'm a mental health counsellor, and that came about through a career change. I was quite happy, or so I thought, doing something completely different. I worked in the media and event industry for over 25 years, and that was great. That's what I trained in. That's what I went to college in. Had a very exciting career up to actually September the 11th, when the organisation I was working with was actually doing a broadcast from the Trade Centre at the time that the towers went down. Oddly enough, I should have been in New York that day, and my boss and I had a conversation, and I didn't get on the plane, which, odd as those things happen. So that was very early on in my career, and I enjoyed it. It was great. It was fantastic. I met lots of people. I worked all around the world. I then, after some time in London, decided that I'd come back to my hometown, which is Newark-on-Trent. And I was feeling slightly, I guess, unfulfilled. So I looked at becoming a radio presenter, in actual fact. And it's one of those things that, without any experience, other than the stations that I've been, messing about with, I'd not worked in a big station. My experience was in television, and that side of broadcast, and nobody really give me a look in. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to set up my own station, and this was early 2004, and I met a business partner, somebody who had got some sort of some technical experience that aligned with mine. We set a radio station up, very much in the early days of the sort of community radio licenses, and that was fantastic, brilliant, really, really good. So I was doing that. We were broadcasting. At the time, I was doing the breakfast show, and then did a chat show, which was fantastic. But I was also sort of looking after, the sales and staff, and all the other things that directors of organisations have to do. And progressively, over about 3 or 4 years, I started to get quite tired, quite exhausted, and I guess you would say I had a breakdown, a complete physical breakdown, probably a mental breakdown. Although that was never diagnosed, and I would never talk about that. I was embarrassed to use the word sort of mental breakdown. So we always said to people, I had a physical breakdown. I was diagnosed with ME, which is chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia, and I had the best part of 18 months off, which was, not expected. The business really needed me at that point. I let my staff down. I let my business partner down. But I had to do what I needed to do, and that was get better. I was particularly poorly. I was 6 weeks into a new relationship with somebody who I didn't think was gonna stick around. Where are we now? 13 years in, we're married and we've got a family, and she really supported me. Without that, I would have had nothing. But I never admitted to myself that I got. I mean, it didn't even get into my thought process that I had a sort of mental health issue. Even back 15 years ago, people didn't talk about mental health like they do now. I think we've got the royals, particularly Prince William, Prince Harry, to thank about people being so open as they are about mental health now. Anybody that can talk deeply about their mother, who was such a part of the sort of British, like the global, establishment, to talk about her in the way they did was absolutely commendable. So yeah, I went back to work. I wouldn't say I was particularly satisfied. I didn't go back into broadcasting full time. I did it sort of on a part-time basis, and I used to find that I would do a weekday chat show, and I would go in the mornings, and it'd be brilliant. I'd love the thrill of being on air. I'd love the thrill of talking to people, and it went from a 2-hour show to a 3-hour show. But I'd come off air, and Steve, I'd be absolutely empty. I'd take my headphones off, I'd walk out the studio, and maybe go and grab a coffee, and I was absolutely, there was nothing inside. There's nothing inside that said, this. I should have been really excited, but what I found was, I loved the high of being a radio presenter. Being in the studio, operating the equipment myself, the autonomy of producing my own content. But then I would walk out, and it would just be empty and vague. And I kind of bibbled about with several other jobs over the next sort of 8 or 9 years, and I got to 38, and my wife had retrained to become a counsellor, and I'd never really understood, never really heard about what a counsellor was. I'd heard the word therapist and things like that, but never really understood. And the opportunity came up to go to a local college which was running dedicated courses for aspiring counsellors. So I thought, I'll do the level 1, see how it goes. Massively outside of my comfort zone. And thought, no, this is not me. And everybody kept saying, when you talk to people, you're so Jonathan Ross, and that came with, if anybody wants to align me to Jonathan Ross, fantastic, thank you very much. I'm clearly not Jonathan Ross, but actually, it was quite insulting for me, because I was trying to walk away from being a broadcaster and learn how to become a counsellor. Anyway, there was a few staff changes at the college, and everything fell into place. And I did a level 5, so I stayed on for another 4 years, and really got a thirst. People use the word passion. I don't like the word passionate. I like the word purposeful. But I guess in this instance, that I was starting to think that this, this new world of talking to people was my passion. I graduated from my sort of college hours with a an amazing bunch of colleagues in the small alumni that we had, and we've all gone off and done amazing things. I then went and did my practice hours. So to become a counsellor, you don't just go to college, you have to then go and practice within an established organisation. So I started my practice with Mind, a very big organisation in the UK. I was working with adult clients, and then I had the opportunity to move to the Children's Bereavement Centre, which is a big established organisation locally, very well renowned, and absolutely thrilled to get accepted there. And I started working with young people, and working with young people was my biggest fear, and it was something I said I would never do. I always said, with sort of my, I guess, corporate experience, broadcast experience, I wanted to work with organisations to help staff overcome their kind of mental health issues, increase their self-confidence, so on and so forth. And I was kind of being pulled into working with young people, and I wasn't comfortable with it. And I did my hours. I graduated, and then the opportunity for me came up to join my wife's practice. And again, I was aiming to work with older people, and I do see private clients. I do see adults as private clients, up to people into their 70s who haven't had their light bulb moment yet. And that's something that was part of my branding, is helping you find your light bulb moment, because that's what happened for me.
Yeah,
really important.
Explain to people, Duncan, about your light bulb moment.
It's what happened to me. It's what happened to me, and it's really important, and it's really sad that we get on this machine, this vehicle that is life, and we get sucked into, we have to do our GCSEs, and that's really important. And then they get superseded by A levels, and then a degree, or whatever job you go into, and then it's about having a family, and then it's about having a mortgage, and then all of a sudden we get to, in my case, mid-30s, and I convinced myself that actually I was really happy, when actually I wasn't at all. And this light bulb moment for me was a multitude of things. It was becoming a dad. That was really difficult for me, in the sense that I had trouble bonding with my son when he arrived, and that expectation that comes with what you should do. I felt really guilty, and then I started to think, ridiculous things like, maybe I should throw myself into being a parent, and the notion of not just having one child, but let's have 9, let's be the Von Trapp family. Totally ridiculous. And then the light bulb moment comes along where you go, that's going to be my purpose. And I see clients who are in their 50s and 60s who come to me and say, I've never had that. That's really bad. That's bad in the sense that they've missed out on so much, and we then go back through their life and see, what's holding them back, and remap their thoughts, their ideals, and see if we can find their light bulb moment for them. It doesn't matter whether we're 19 or whether we're 65. We still can have that moment that then takes us off into a completely different path. And that's really the kind of thought process, with the light bulb moment. And some people have lots of them, and it's great to be able to go, that's my light bulb moment, and actually I'm going to focus on that for the time being. We get very drilled in that we focus on one thing and that's our goal, and we go for it, where actually we can be really transient, and we we don't have to follow the confines of what school tell us to do, for example. Now, oddly enough, having tried to resist working with young people, 95% of our clients, so the active listening therapies, which is myself and my wife, we work with 4 academy schools in the area. So we work with young people aged predominantly 11 to 18. And that's the biggest thing that I'm working on at the moment. And to take kids who haven't had the best start in life, and then they're resisting all of the good things in life, the things that we should be following, the education system, the law, so on and so forth. They're rejecting all of that. And then you sit down with them and they say, after 3 or 4 sessions, well, actually, you're the most important person in my life at the moment. That becomes a massive responsibility that is both humbling, challenging, exciting, all in one. To have that responsibility, what a shame that, some people don't have the conversations that I can have with them, with their parents, for example, and then go through life going, my dad said I couldn't do this, or I wasn't worthy. That then knocks your self-confidence and self-worth. This is what I work a lot with, the authentic you. What's the authentic you? And that doesn't mean one person. We probably wear 6 or 7 hats throughout the day. And it's about making sure that those different personalities don't clash. So, for instance, with the kids, I say, for a start, you're a son or a daughter. The approach that you have with your parents is a different approach to that you have with your teacher, with your friends, with the police, with me, and all throughout that, there are 5 different hats within their authentic self that they're struggling to come to terms with. And with that comes self-worth. And if their script has been negative throughout their life, for whatever reason, it might be that they're a carer. I work with some fantastic young people who have been carers since they were 7 or 8, and they're getting towards GCSE age. Actually, they've been in an adult world for 8 or 9 years already, and that's so commendable. But actually, they haven't got a clue what's going on in their own life because they've never thought about their own life. And this is where the whole kind of light bulb moment comes full circle for them. And it's about empowerment.
Have they, Duncan? They haven't had a youth, have they? Because they've always been in that adult world, and they haven't kind of actually grown up as a teenager, a young person.
It's been stolen from them for whatever reason. And we almost have to take them back, because there's a lot of guilt that goes with, well, why should I be looking after myself? Why should I be looking after myself when my mum's in bed, or my dad's got PTSD, or whatever. It's tough working with young people. And as I say, it was I was having a chat to my college professors earlier on in the week, and they were saying, isn't it funny how you have this sense of direction of where you're going to be, and something just draws you and then knocks you onto a different path. That's without getting too spiritual, is it fate? But I really pushed against working with kids, and here I am. I work with 25 kids a week, and all of them have very, very different outlooks on life, ideas of authority and what that is. And for me, whilst I never talk to school or parents about what we've spoken about, I do reports, and I do say, here's the development of, this particular pupil. But there are times when actually the school or maybe the police come to me and say, you are the strongest relationship that these people have. And I wouldn't say I struggle to get my head around that. It's a privilege that I haven't fully appreciated yet. And it is an amazing one, because sometimes it comes down, other social workers, police, sometimes child exploitation agencies come to me and say, you're the one that's had the biggest influence in this person. You're when we're deciding how this young person is going to move forward, yours is going to be the casting vote. And that's, wow, that's almost playing God. And that's well beyond what I expected being a counsellor was or thought about, or and it still challenges me every day. And we're in such strange times for adults as well as young people. And who can blame kids for not getting their head around what's going on, when actually as adults we can't get a head around, literally can't get a head around what's happening right now. And it's easy to get ourselves into negative thought processes. I talked online this week on my blog about, it's really easy if we think about the thoughts in our head, a bit like the news. We all know what's in the news at the moment. But let's say Sky or BBC or whatever, CNN, if you're in the States, it's all about, let's take the news and let's put on the news the important bits of what's happening and reinforce what's happening. And actually, it's one story that gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'll give you an example of a little bit of scaremongering, if you like, which, and I came from the media industry. I learnt my trade on how to not scaremonger people on air, but how to present an argument and then a counter argument, and then get people to listen in to something that's coming up. When COVID was in its infancy, we're talking February last year, my son was listening to the radio, and the news was 40 people had died. 40 people had died from COVID, and that was a massive number back then. And then an hour later, 40 people have died from COVID. And then an hour later, 40 people have died from COVID. And my son said, so is that 120 people have died this afternoon of COVID? Because that's the image, it's 40 more people. And it's very easy to lose the narrative of what's happening in the news to absolute doom and gloom. So is it any wonder, lots of people are struggling with their mental health right now, because you have all these, experts coming online and discussing what's happening in the news. And it just goes round and round and round and round and round. And it gets worse and worse and worse in our head. And our script is like that. And it picks out the negative stuff. And, if, as an example now, if I was to say to you, let's go outside and have a conversation, let's listen to a conversation that two people are having. If we stood next to them, we'd get a grasp of what they were saying. If I was to hand one of them a megaphone, and they were to, talk their part of the conversation through the megaphone, you're going to pick up on the loudest element of this conversation. But that's not to say that that's the most important or the most appropriate part of the conversation. And this is how I explain how our brain is kidding us into thinking overtly negative things. And now I'm not saying what we can find light in everything that's happening, but that's a lot of what we do with clients is, okay, let's look at the situation. And now, is a great opportunity to go, okay, you may be at home, you may be holed up and not able to leave. But is this an opportunity for me to, get another qualification or play the guitar or draw or do something completely different rather than feel obliged to turn on the news and enhance the negativity that's lodging in our head that the news institutions are reinforcing? Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, of course it does. Yeah. Paul Campbell is just kind of like left us comment, and I don't know if you can see it in front of you.
Yeah, I've got that.
Yeah. What do you think about that? What do you think about his comment?
I think it's multifaceted, really. We live, certainly what's happening at the moment in terms of the pandemic, we've not seen anything like that for maybe 3 or 4 generations. So I remember my grandparents, both sides of the family, my grandparents talking about the war, but not really, it was this make do amend attitude, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I think that then transcended down into the next generation. So my parents. So nobody talked about mental health. The only mental health that people talked about was, the mental institutions, which nobody really knew a great deal about. We had a hospital close by us, which was known as a mental institution. We had Saxondale Hospital in Nottingham, which was an asylum, but nobody really knew what happened. So nobody talked about it. And, anybody with those kind of symptoms was taken away, taken away from society and put, behind locked doors. And it was an embarrassment. So people didn't talk about it. As I mentioned earlier on in the show, we even 10 years ago, we weren't talking about mental health, and it took, even for me, having actually gone through therapy myself, it took a long time for me to admit that I probably had a nervous breakdown, and it's even at that point in 10 years, I was embarrassed. I'm not embarrassed about it now. I have to say, I've come to terms with it through my training, through my experience. I've able to actualize, if you like, in my own head. I'm comfortable with what has happened. But now we have situations where parents. This is where conflict might arise now, Steve. Parenting style, I think, is key. We have a generation where at age 11 we've never been more connected, so we can connect to people on the other side of the world. We see things that we believe are the reality, and they're not. The year 7s, so we're talking 11 and 12 year olds I'm working with at the moment, are in one sense massively adult in their outlook, and talk about very adult things and themes because it's accessible online. And whether or not parents know that children have access to this kind of material, And I'm not just talking about, sexual nature. I'm talking about, the news. You click on the news, as we've identified. People are overtly negative, and it doesn't take a lot to go, this is, as Paul says, too much fear on the news. So on one hand, we've got kids who are very connected, so they will talk to each other online really confidently, too confidently, in fact, and they will perhaps say things that face to face we wouldn't say together, because it would be rude, and actually they wouldn't have the confidence to be able to do that. And this is the problem. There's a boundary issue. Kids are very confident, behind the keyboard and with the headphones on, but actually when we bring them together, they don't know how to communicate. So that's one reason why I think we've got a lot of issues. I think social media is wonderful and terrible in equal measure. There is a wonderful example that I use with all of my clients, young people and adults. There was a really nice picture of a gentleman. He was beautifully tanned. Let's say he was late teens, early 20s. He got a cocktail in his hand. He was sat under a brolly. He got his shades on, and the image suggests that his life's wonderful. You pull out of that image, and he's sat on a sand pit on a building site surrounded by a slum. So I use that to explain how what you see online is not necessarily, and quite often, not what the reality is. And this is something that is not taught. We're getting kids who are very sexualized at a very early age, and parents don't know how to deal with it. And then we've got other parents who are happy to let their kids, play Call of Duty till 3 a.m. Now, a massive thing about being a counsellor is, I'm not here to judge. So I'm not here to judge the parents, and I'm not here to judge the children. But, we have to consider boundaries, and we have to think about what's appropriate for our children. And actually, kids may think that they're not at school at the moment, but actually, a lot of the kids that I'm seeing at the moment have to be up at 9 o'clock and have to be logged in and have to engage, and they're up till 3 a.m. playing whatever, because they haven't got the pressure, or there's no perceived pressure of being at school. And then they rock out of bed at 9 o'clock in the morning, don't have breakfast, don't have a shower, log in, and then wonder why at 10:30 they crash. And parents, I'm an example of that. Actually, I'm trying to run a business, and homeschooling my 9-year-old is tough. I'm here for clients. I can't be here for my child, and that comes with it some guilt. Thankfully for me, mental health, certainly within the school that my son goes to, is seen as a key industry. And this week we've been able to get him a place, which I've had a lot of guilt this week. I really have, with where do my allegiances lie. I have my clients who need me. I have my son who needs me. And it's finding that balance.
The trouble is, though, Duncan, it's really good what you're doing. It's really good, and what you're doing with all the children and doing it for yourself. But the trouble is, who do you load off to at the end of the day? Because more you build it up, sometimes our mental health gets really, really bad, because we're full of we're full of stresses of the day. We're full of,
Yeah, yeah.
a bit confused. Who do you load it off to?
Me personally.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so there are lots of things, lots of things in place, and we'll come back to what I would say to clients, and I have to put in place those things. So self-care. I need to ensure that whether it be an hour a day or whatever, I need to make sure that I have my downtime. I use that by walking the dog. That's I hate the cold, by the way. The chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia and cold don't go together in the same sentence. So to actually go out and take the dog's a real struggle for me. But if I don't do it, if I don't get the sunlight, if I don't get the fresh air, then I'm not good for my clients later on in the day. I'm lucky we've got a nature reserve at the end of the road. I can rock round the lake for an hour with the dog, and then make sure I'm ready for my clients. So self-care is really, really important, and we'll come back to that on a wider level. But for me, a lot of I would say the middle years of counselling is about making sure you're in the right position and knowing your own boundaries of being able to offload. What I can't do, of course, is come home, my wife's a counsellor also, and go, do you know what, I saw client X today and they were talking about all of the circumstances, because obviously what we everything we talk about is 100% confidential. So I can't come home and offload to anybody. What I do have once a month is supervision. So I work with a more experienced counsellor to not counsel me, but to make sure I'm ethically in the right frame of mind. I've been able to box off the things that I've struggled dealing with, and an example of that being when I had my son, for example, when I was dealing with young people very early on in my career, we're talking 4 or 5 years ago now, in my counselling career, when a young person would come to me and say they were struggling with the relationship with their father, for example, that would really tug at my heartstrings, and I had to be really careful not to overstep the boundary between Duncan, the counsellor, and Duncan, a father. Okay. And there were times when, and young people do push the boundary to see what they can get from you. There was a time when a young person tugged at my heartstrings and wanted to he without giving too much away, it was school holidays and he didn't feel he got the autonomy that he deserved, and he wanted a bike, and his friend, somebody else, had used the service that I was working in, and the service had raised some money for a bike to give him, and I went into father mode. And I overstepped the mark and went, I tell you what we'll do. Let's see if, like your friend, we can get you a bike. Massively no. I overstepped the boundary. I overstepped the boundary there. And I had to take that to supervision, and I had to be called to task. And it got noted, and we worked through it, and it was emotional because the young person that I was working with displayed issues that were difficult for him, and who wouldn't want to wade in and go, now come on, wear your heart, an empath, we wear hearts on our sleeves, and we want to we want to do the right thing, but there are times when I have to maintain that boundary, and that's something when I talk to new counsellors, I go back to college and mentor, and I use that as an example of when young people, adults do try and take advantage of you as well, but particularly young people can tug at your heartstrings. So supervision is really important, and I have had my supervisor for my career. Some people change their supervisor, but for me, she's we've built this relationship, and I see her once a month, and I offload, and we make sure that I'm in the right position. She's critical with me, but that works for me. It's constructive. I wouldn't say criticism, but it's constructive, positive feedback for me to go back and reflect on how I'm working. So I'm in the best possible position that I can be in. It took me probably 2 years. It took me 2 years to be able to not, shut the door from the office and come home and open the door free of the issues of the day. I don't drink, I don't smoke, but there has certainly been occasions where I've come home and I've been physically shaken. I used to find that very early on, if I was dealing with something difficult, and oddly enough, it would always be a client on a Friday afternoon or a Friday night. Now, whether or not that's, just something psychologically, aware for me to deal with, but I would come home and I would shake and I would sweat. And I'd say to my wife, you know what, I feel like I've done 10 rounds with Tyson, because that's how it felt. But that's, the busier I got, the more resilient I got to be able to deal with the tough stuff. And let me tell you, I do deal with adults. I've had adults call me up and say, "I'm stood on a railway line. You're the last person I'm going to speak to. I just wanted to let you know." One heck of a responsibility there.
It is. And I'll tell you what, Duncan, I've got to end it there. But what I want you to do is I want to talk to you more.
My pleasure.
About going into, because you started from childhood and going to adult, but we're running out of time.
No problems.
What I would love you to do, when you're free again, we'll get you on, because I've got a good response here, a lot of response.
Brilliant.
And everybody's quite enjoyed it.
Brilliant. And if anybody's got any questions, of course, chuck them out.
Yeah. So what I've done is I've got around about 5 minutes. I've been listening because this has been a good conversation. And if you've got any questions for the last 5 minutes, I'd be grateful. If you haven't, what we'll do, we'll get Duncan on probably when you're free again. When are you free again? Are you?
So look, if it helps and people know that it's coming up again, let's do same time next week.
Yeah, same time next week. Okay.
Perfect.
So, same time next week, and we can do that again. But in the meantime, if you've got any questions, please come, and because we usually do a Q&A at this time anyway. Or contact Duncan on Facebook. He's always on Facebook.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I am available to see people remotely, by the way. So if anybody has got some issues that they want to deal with, what I must say is, if you are feeling suicidal, if you are feeling in those kind of critical positions, and it's the middle of the night, the best people to talk to are the Samaritans. Their phone number is free. It doesn't appear on your phone bill. 116-123. They're brilliant people to talk to. I would also say Mind is a fantastic resource online.
We use Mind quite a lot.
Mind.org.uk. There's some real lived experience videos on there. There's some really good advice. Advice is something that I don't give as a counsellor. What I tend to do is we work together to find the best possible answer for the client.
Yeah.
So we work inwardly with that, trying to find the best option rather than going, do you know what, in my opinion, I think you should do. But there are advice services out there who will be able to help you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So, guys, we've got to go because I've got another show for 9:30. But in the meantime, thank you, Duncan.
No, my pleasure. I'll see you same time next week.
Yeah. It would be grateful if you just stay there for a minute and have a chat.
Of course.
In the meantime, guys, don't forget, next Wednesday, there is a men's group, mental health. What we're doing is that we've got our own team on board now where we've got a counsellor and we're still looking for another counsellor. But don't forget, we can't pay people at the moment because we're not funded. But what we're trying to do is help a lot of people. So we've got a men's group next week. So whatever you're doing, if you're not, if you kind of like got an hour to spare, come on to join our men's group. It's in the beginning. And what we do, we're talking about mental health issues. We're talking about, the way we are, the way we feel and everything. Just for men, not for women, just for men. For a group for that. That starts at 7:30 next Wednesday. Everybody is welcome online. I'll put a link up on my website and also my other Facebook pages. Also, don't forget, guys, we also support Mind. This year, we've already had 2 fundraisers, and we raised quite a bit of money for Mind so far. We got another one coming up very soon, hopefully. So that should be good. And also, don't forget, if any of you do feel suicidal, don't forget we have got contacts and everything. And don't forget to use our number too, and also the Samaritans. And also, mine has got a lot of information too. Thank you very much for joining me. I will speak to Duncan so we can get him back next week. He's been really, really good. In the meantime, guys, I've got to go, but take care. Until next week, bye bye.